Let's talk a little bit about survival of the fittest versus meritocracy, or more like the myth of meritocracy. First of all, survival of the fittest is a concept that was discovered by Gregory Mendel, who was credited with discovering the process of evolution. Survival of the fittest is how evolution happens. This is how the most fit, the strongest organism for that specific environment is the one that propagates. It has more babies, and it provides those babies more resources because it is the best fit for that environment. An example of that takes place in naturally occurring systems, like a forest with bears or an ocean with sharks. An example would be a parent shark that is stronger and faster, is able to hunt down more prey, and has babies that are biologically a bit stronger and a bit faster, and they are better able to secure resources and protect their offspring, so more of them survive and get out into the world. And as a result, over time, you have a lot more of these faster and stronger sharks, and the ones who are weaker or slower get phased out, and the species of sharks starts reflecting much more this fast, strong predator. The weak, slow ones went away. They're not reflected anymore. That is an example of survival of the fittest. You drop one of these sharks in a saltwater environment where they can find the food that they're programmed to find, and they're going to dominate that environment. Now, that is very different from the myth of meritocracy. The myth of meritocracy, and when there is social influence that is inherited from ancestors, and those ancestors, the narratives and the stories that those ancestors had, still are connected to the elders and the authority figures today. That's still how things operate. An example of that is in how statistically folks who identify as white have access to so much more financial resources than people identifying as of color, Black or Latino, Hispanic descent. And if you just look at this with the lens of survival of the fittest, which would be faulty, this is when you get the myth of meritocracy. You go, okay, well, those people have more resources. That's because they all earned it. That's because they all deserve it. When there are probably a lot of really hardworking people in those spaces. And what also happened is in the generation of boomers, of baby boomers, when everybody was buying homes and coming back from war, a lot of folks were able to buy homes, a lot of white families, able to buy homes at really, really low rates when real estate was way, way easy to get in this country. And that was also the same time frame where we're one generation out from Jim Crow and desegregation in this country. So people who were Black and of color had very little access to resources. Many of them, historically, were still living in government subsidized housing. They didn't have an option to buy into real estate at its infancy in this country. And then what happened over the last several decades, we see that a lot of folks who are white are able to access further financial resources off of their real estate investments over time. That can be seen going back to money accrued from buying and selling real estate and houses of their ancestors. And folks who are of color do not have very often those same types of experiences and collections of financial resources through the years and through the generations that they can access. It has nothing to do with someone's right or privilege to be there in the moment. It has everything to do with the social influence that was inherited over time. Meritocracy, the idea that just because a human being has more influence that they deserve to be there, is not accurate at all.